Hi everyone, this is Lara Hammock from the Marble Jar channel. And in today's video, I will give you my summary and takeaways from the book Attachment in Psychotherapy by David J. Wallin, PhD. So I'm doing my residency as a mental health therapist, and I am reading a ton of books so that I can be as helpful as possible to my clients. Some of these books, such as this one, fall pretty hard into the training manual for clinicians category, but it really helps me to synthesize the information better when I summarize it for you. So I'm putting it out there for anyone who might be interested or who is considering buying this book. The more research I do, the more convinced I become that our attachment history is at the heart of most of our relationship and emotional issues as adults. By attachment, I mean the quality of the relationship that we had with our primary caretaker as infants. The more I learn, the more significant I believe this impact is on our sense of self, on our ability to regulate our emotions, and even on our beliefs about the world. This is the first book that I've read that fleshes out some of the thoughts that I've been having about why therapy works and why a strong attachment relationship to a therapist is required for positive change. I read this book twice already, and it is dense. Plus, I took 97 pages of notes. I kid you not. I really benefited from it, but it will be difficult to squeeze even a brief summary into a 10 or so minute video. So let's get started. So first of all, the author, David Wallin, is a psychologist. He's a graduate of both Harvard and Berkeley, and he's been practicing psychotherapy for over 30 years. So I'm going to assume that most people watching this video have at least a glancing knowledge of attachment theory, but in case you don't, in a nutshell, it's the theory that the quality of our attachment relationship with our primary caregiver, usually but not always mom, determines how we interact with others, how we explore the world, how we handle our emotions, and how we know ourselves. And this style of attachment that we developed as babies tends to follow us into adulthood and to affect those adult relationships, particularly our primary love attachment, our parenting style, and how we think about ourselves and others. So here's the deal. Some of us were lucky enough to be born to primary caretakers who were attentive and loving. When we got hurt or we needed emotional care, they turned to us and comforted us. As a result, these folks largely became securely attached and have continued to feel emotionally safe enough to explore the world. But there are plenty of people, upwards of 40% of the population, that didn't have that. When they got hurt or scared, their caretaker wasn't always there to comfort them. And depending on how intermittent that care was and the baby's temperament, these folks developed either an attachment style that is anxious, meaning they are always worried about whether their caretaker will be there for them, or avoidant, meaning they just assume they won't be, and so they fend for themselves and they shut down any need for emotional care from others. And then there are the babies who are actively afraid of their primary caregiver, which results in a disorganized attachment style. And as I said, these styles tend to follow you into adulthood. Secure babies turn into secure and autonomous adults who can be emotionally open, trust appropriately, and ask for what they need. Anxiously attached adults continue to be preoccupied with how much affection they are receiving from their romantic partner. Avoidantly attached adults tend to be dismissive and uncomfortable with emotional intimacy. And people with disorganized attachment style have just that, really unpredictable and unresolved attachment patterns. Since we can't pick our parents or redo our childhoods, this might be all pretty depressing if it weren't for new research demonstrating the neuroplasticity of the human brain. What this means is that we can now learn new attachment strategies and behaviors as long as we are in a secure and healthy relationship. And why would you want to develop a more secure attachment style? Because those folks tend to be more trusting, more connected, and more comfortable in their relationships. They can be independent and they can allow their partners to also be independent. They can set boundaries when needed and they can handle disappointment or rejection. In short, they are happier, more confident, and more resilient. So Wallin starts this book with a history of attachment theory, which talks about its two founders, John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. And then he goes on to discuss contributions by Mary Main and Peter Fonagy that have helped us to understand more about how attachment styles are created. He then talks about how this formative relationship shaped the self and the neurobiology of attachment. This is all pretty fascinating stuff, which I am just glossing over, but I encourage you to buy the book and read all about this. In the time that we do have left, I want to talk about his 3 overarching themes, which all deal with how to use attachment theory in therapy. First of all, to date, attachment theory has not really been used clinically. In other words, it is a way that is to understand how people are the way they are, but there aren't a lot of interventions and tools developed for therapists to use to treat clients who present with all of these different attachment styles. The exception to this is Sue Johnson's emotionally focused therapy, which does use attachment-based strategies to counsel distressed couples. I should note that she also has expanded this to deal with families and individuals. I'm going to read about that next. Anyway, back to this book. So Wallin essentially argues that relational or intersubjective theory can be seen to propose attachment-based interventions, since they both begin from the same basic set of assumptions. He then goes on to make a compelling argument about how those two theories work together. Okay, so here are the three themes. Number one, relationships are healing. So in other words, in order to change your attachment style, it's very difficult to do alone. That transformation generally requires that you are in a secure and healthy relationship. And his point is that the therapeutic relationship can be just that. In fact, I would argue that the emotional security of the alliance between the therapist and the client is the only thing that really allows change of any sort to happen. Someone once said, talk therapy is just an excuse to hang out long enough to let the relationship do the healing. But Wallin goes beyond this. He emphasizes the therapist's role not only in co-creating a secure relationship, but also to push the clients to think about their thinking, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a second. The second theme is experience can't always be verbalized. So a lot of what goes on in relationships is not said out loud. In fact, much of it doesn't even bubble up into consciousness. If you feel awkward with your friend, are you going to say, why are things so awkward right now? Probably not. You're just going to muddle through. But in a therapy room, we have to use everything, especially the things that aren't being verbalized. So of course that means nonverbal communication like crossed arms, turning away, or rolled eyes. But Wallin goes beyond this. He believes that what can't be verbalized or even acknowledged gets enacted, evoked, or embodied. So enacting means that you, the therapist, are participating in a pattern that the client has played out in the past. So maybe you are the caretaker and they are in a helpless role. Maybe you're both avoiding emotions by over-intellectualizing. Whatever it is, the therapist is required to be attuned to what is going on and to comment or invite conversation about that enactment. Evoking means that if I'm feeling uncomfortable, maybe that it's being projected by the client. Or if I feel irritable or sad, those could be things the client is bringing into the room. The therapist has to be aware of and willing to talk about the things that he or she is feeling as a way to access and discuss something the client may be feeling, but is unaware of or uncertain about. And finally, the same thing happens with physical sensations. Sometimes the client, unbeknownst to them, brings something into the room that might cause the therapist's heart to race, stomach to hurt, or shoulders to tense up. This is called embodiment. So therapists should also be aware of and willing to disclose these physical sensations that they're having as a way to reflect back their reaction to this co-created environment with a client, particularly when clients who have problems feeling emotions, like those who are avoidant or have unprocessed trauma in their backgrounds. Having other ways to approach these emotions might help to start to feel them within the context of this safe therapeutic relationship. And finally, the third theme is to encourage mentalizing and mindfulness. So Wallin offers a lifeline and a pathway that can lead to more resilience, more psychological flexibility, and ultimately a happier life. And he does this by describing 3 different thinking styles, which he calls stances towards experience. The first one is embeddedness. So this means that you are embedded with your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. You believe everything you are thinking, and you don't have a sense that there are other perspectives, other thoughts, or other ways of feeling. What you feel and think are the truth, full stop. So you could be thinking, everyone hates me, which is objectively not true. But when you are embedded, you believe that your thoughts and your feelings 100% reflect reality. So this feels crappy and it leads to crappy decision making. Okay, so this is not entirely linear, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just say that the next step is mentalizing. So mentalizing is the ability to perceive that you are having thoughts, but that they may not be entirely accurate, and you are having emotions, but that those are of finite duration and that they will pass. Also, other people may have different perspectives, and mentalizing allows you to guess what other people might be thinking or feeling. It's the ability to get a little distance from your inner world and think about your thinking. So mentalizing is the first step towards psychological flexibility and peace of mind. This is a hallmark of talk therapy, although I guess that would actually be talking about thinking rather than thinking about thinking. But an equally important ability is that of mindfulness. So if mentalizing allows you to take a step back from your thoughts and feelings, mindfulness allows you to be in the moment and observe your thoughts and emotions as you're having them without judgment or blame. Mindfulness can make mentalizing easier, and it serves to ground you in the present moment, get in touch with all the physical sensations in your body, and understand the temporary nature of experience. These two skills, mentalizing and mindfulness, can be learned. And those two skills are hallmarks of securely attached people. So that's all I have time for, but there is so much more in this book. Go out and buy it now if any of this was at all interesting to you. And let me know what you think. Comments are always appreciated, and thanks for watching.